All right. Here it is. Podcast episode 15.
Podcast.
It's the IQ podcast. We are the Sunny Machine, Snazzy Bastard, Eat Your Meats, and Highly in Pickles. If you guys are new to this podcast, we talk about streaming and we discuss streaming topics. And we try to go and discuss some of the more difficult things I think a lot of other podcasts are probably not talking about. And this might be one of those topics. Today we're going to be discussing being an influencer and the responsibility, the accountability that kind of holds. And I think this is actually a good area for us to kind of discuss because I've seen a lot of streamers, and this happened to me too. This isn't just something I've witnessed. This is something that personally I experienced. When you first start out streaming, you have this dream of being a big streamer, and you want your stream to be this thing, this successful thing. And I didn't mentally prepare properly for what that actually meant. And when there were signs of success and things starting to show up that made me feel like it's working, at the same time, I got apprehensive about that. It gave me an uncomfortable feeling. And instead of feeling like, oh, this is working, oh, this is good, we're heading in the right direction, I started to doubt and feel like it made me uncomfortable. And I think it's because I didn't mentally prepare myself to properly be ready to influence people. I felt uncomfortable with the idea of me being an influence on people or people looking up to me, mainly because I was self-conscious or, insecure, and subconsciously, even though I felt like I really wanted my stream to be super successful, the more eyeballs and the more people that I felt like I was influencing, it was having this weird negative thing happen in myself. And you can't really avoid that feeling. The more you are known, the more influence and power you hold as a streamer, you're going to have to face this kind of responsibility. I think this stream is kind of settled at this point. If you guys had a little hitch there, it should be okay. So I've seen a lot of other people actually do this, where their stream numbers will increase, their viewership will increase, their stream will be going well, and then they kind of self-sabotage, and they destroy their own momentum and success. They take a mental break, or they start playing something that nobody wants to watch. I think that they weren't fully prepared for the position of influence and power. So I think it's probably a good idea for everyone to take time and accept, first of all, that if you're going to be a streamer, you want to move into a place in your own mind of accepting and actually taking upon this responsibility, the responsibility of being an influence on other people. If you can do that, if you can mentally prepare yourself to be in that position, you're going to be better off in the long run for making decisions around that kind of position, and not maybe fighting yourself over the success and not being in your own way, not self-sabotaging as much, hopefully. So I want to suggest that everyone who wants to be a big streamer, they take time to do like a mental self-care preparation, meditation kind of thing, where they really think about what this means to be a big streamer, to have this kind of influence. I think that's actually the first step to success, is preparing yourself for being an influence, because there's no way you're not going to be an influence when 100 people are watching or 1,000 people are watching. You're going to have some sort of influence over people's lives, whether you like it or not, whether you try to avoid it or not. It's just innately a part of relationships. And this business is about having relationships. If you're in a relationship with another person, that other person is going to influence you. Growing up, my best friends and I, we like created our own catchphrases, and we had our own sayings, and we acted like each other. You rub off on each other, and as a streamer, you're going to rub off on your audience. You're going to rub off on other people. So you want to be comfortable with who you are and what kind of influence you're having. So I think that's kind of the introduction to why we need to discuss being a responsible influencer, because you can't avoid it. I don't think you could be a streamer, maybe a hobby streamer, somebody who doesn't really care about growth. But even you, if you pop off and you have 1,000 viewers all the time, whether you like it or not, you're influencing people. You are having an influence. So I think it's better for everybody to kind of prepare for this. There's probably a few people, personality types, which are more rare, that would be okay and not have to think about this, and they could become successful and not worry so much about having this influence. But I think a lot of people, if they don't prepare properly, once they get it, they're going to be like kind of uncomfortable with that if they haven't prepared properly. So the first thing we want to talk about is I want to hear from you, each of you, and I want you to explain your position on this as well, and talk to us about what you think responsible influencing is, and give us your insights. So let's start with Snazzy.
Hello.
Snazzy.
It's good that you picked me first, because I'm the most nervous one of the bunch.
I don't know. I'm sweating bullets, so you know.
I 100% have not come to terms with the idea that like people look up to me. Like it's mind-boggling that my antics, my shenanigans, as it were, on the internet, like influence people in any meaningful way. So I would say I'm probably furthest down the ladder maybe than anybody else here on getting a good grip on that. But like, I think for me, the feeling is like you don't want to influence somebody negatively. You don't want to impact somebody's life negatively, right? My whole thing is always like, if I can make somebody laugh, if I can make somebody's day better, if I can give somebody a distraction, that's really what I want to do. Like, I don't want to encourage somebody to do something that's going to be detrimental to them. And yeah, sometimes that's a fine line that you have to walk, right? Because like, you don't really see and get, you don't get the full kind of feeling of what the other person's thinking, because they are, behind the screen, right? They are just in a way text on a screen. So it can be very difficult to kind of gauge exactly how much of an effect and what kind of effect you are having on someone. Because yeah, it's very difficult to gauge, like, oh hey, am I being a destructive influence in this person's life? So I always try to be the most positive influence I can be, given the situation. So that's where I'm at with it.
Okay, that was good. Thank you for sharing. Pickles, I want to hear from you. I'm giving Meats the last word on this section, because, yeah, you guys will find out. Go ahead, Pickles.
So what's the question exactly?
How do you feel?
Pickles.
Well, I mean, like, I'm just saying, I just want to respond, like,
it's not really a question. It's more of a tell us your thoughts on influencing and the responsibility that comes with being a creator, a streamer.
I think people hear the term influencer and kind of simultaneously roll their eyes and also overestimate what that means. Like, I think it's as simple as like playing a game somebody's interested in, and then you're like, yeah, this game is good, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna buy it then. Like, it's like talking about it in the barest terms. Influencing is just like having, like Snazzy said, people looking up to you, right? Like, or just respecting your opinion or whatever. So I think that, there is a responsibility there. And for me, like, I had numerous younger siblings growing up. Like, I've always been the oldest kid in my family. So I've always had to like be conscious and careful about like the things that I say and do, because everybody else in the family will start doing it too. that's younger than me. So like, I don't know. You got to be conscious of it at the very least.
I think one of the things you brought up that is good is that this is like a multi-tiered, multifaceted thing. It could be as simple as influencing someone to purchase a game. And that is the same. It's weird because it's like almost the same exact power if you say something that is also influential outside of not something is not as benign. And that's the stuff we're going to talk about probably moving forward. But let's hear from Eat Your Meats about your take on all this.
My thoughts about influencing is that no matter what you do, you're gonna influence someone in some way, right? Even just at the grocery store, you can influence people. It's about being thoughtful about how you influence others around you, understanding and respecting that everyone's individual experience is different. So I think there's a lot of ways about sharing your personal experience and sharing your opinions with the caveat that it's just that. It's your experience and your opinions. And, I think the internet is a difficult place to do that smartly.
Yes.
It's a difficult place to do that smartly. I think Sunny was alluding to, I am, in fact, an expert, right? But I don't share that on stream. It's like a totally different space. So I have a terminal degree in healthcare and multiple board certifications in healthcare, specifically psychiatry. But I don't talk about how to treat mental illness really like on my stream, because by telling people how to do it, you're influencing their treatment choices. You're influencing their experiences that may not be the right choice for them. So I think from that area in particular, it gets a little shadier too, just because as a professional in that space, you can actually technically get in trouble for giving medical advice. Yeah. So that's a bit more of an extreme example.
There are rules.
There are rules. So I always say anything.
Even without that, you would still probably approach it very cautiously and very carefully as if there was no rules.
I've gotten like 10 people in chat hooked on Bang. I mean, not on purpose. I never explicitly say you should drink Bang. I say I enjoy Bang.
But this is a good example of even just your activities on stream can have an influence.
Exactly. I've never told anyone to drink Bang, right? I drink Bang all the time. I'm a fan.
Just showing it to the camera, and then
I enjoy it.
I drink the White Monster exclusively. I wonder how many of you do that now, just because you've seen me.
I'm drinking water with electrolytes.
I share what I drink, but I never say like you should drink Bang. It's good for you because that's not responsible of me. But still having to take into consideration that someone is seeing me do this, and that might influence their decision, right? So another example would be I ascribe to a low carbohydrate diet because it helps me with my migraines, but that absolutely doesn't mean that it's going to help you with your migraines. So I would never sit here and recommend.
Yeah.
It might.
It might.
It might not.
And that's the problem with this space.
Worse.
I think this is where streamers get into trouble. It's because, like with the migraine thing and the low carb diet, obviously I'm on a low carb diet as well, and it's so easy to want to press those buttons as a streamer, and like because this is where a streamer knows they have influence, right? And now I know that if I talk about my diet and I like tell you, and I think this is where you don't have to not be an influence. Nobody's suggesting not to be an influence. It's actually probably a good thing to bring up things like maybe like a low carb diet so that you encourage people to think. I think that's where the influence really plays a key role, is that you want your influence to be in a place that's kind of like a university. Like the real point of school is to get you to critically think about things. If a teacher is trying to tell you what to think, that you might as well be going to church at that point. And it's not about telling people how to think or what to think. It's just trying to get people to think, and knowing that you have that kind of influence over people with your stream itself is really what's important here, so that you play very carefully around. Like, there's obviously benign things. Like, I really love this video game. It's like you can just dive deep into like influencing people to play your favorite video game. Like, I tell everybody to play Bayonetta, and that's benign. But when it comes to like diet, so that there's like a spectrum here, and I think this is where we're trying to tell people that you need, if you're going to be having an influence over people, you should have a healthy respect for that spectrum and try to figure out where a good balance for your influence. If you start stepping into diet, you know, you don't want to be like, play Bayonetta, like eat low carb. That's danger. You're starting to push an agenda and a position on people, rather than encouraging them to figure it out for themselves. And you're always safe to just encourage, right? You could do that with Bayonetta and any other game or whatever. The benign thing, you can apply the extreme cases all the way back and use that same level of influence properly. So it's kind of like you want to develop a practice, right? Of communicate what you're communicating to your audience and how it's coming off. And
but even the benign things, if they're, you know, if they might be benign to like most of us, but like, for example, right, let's say you play Dark Souls a lot, right? I'm using a personal example. A lot of Souls games are like the thing that I do, right? And if I'm encouraging somebody to play Dark Souls, but all that Dark Souls does is make them angry and upset and mad at everything,
true.
like I'm doing them a disservice, right? So like, you have to be careful even with benign things, because if somebody doesn't respond well to, you know, a benign thing, that could still get out of hand if you try to encourage somebody in that direction.
Sure.
But I agree with you mostly that there are things that are safe, maybe. I guess
safer
is the right word. Safer to encourage,
yeah.
like,
because you always have people with addiction.
this video game or whatever, yeah.
I
versus
right,
dangerous things where like, take this medicine, right? Because that's really bad.
Take
Don't
this
ever
medicine,
do that, please,
no.
God.
Or you don't need medicine, which is we'll get. These are the danger territories. We'll get there. Know your limits. That's kind of the first section here. Is like, try to understand your limitations. And this has to do with you, the streamer. And sometimes you're like, Eat Your Meats is an expert in mental health, but she knows the limitation on her influence should not be to tell people, even though she can, and barring the legality or like getting in trouble, like, as far as expertise, she has every right to talk about this stuff. And you may feel like you have every right to talk about your diet or exercise routine or medication.
I mean, technically you do have the right. It's just, is it a good idea?
Okay, right. Okay, yes.
Well,
True.
there's a difference between that and also having the credentials as well, right?
It's hard to have credentials in nutrition, even in the medical space. But the idea here is to, I think first, like going back to my first point, you want to kind of accept that this is a thing you have to shoulder. It's a part of the responsibility of being an influencer. And you want to be careful with what your influence looks like and how you use it. So knowing your limits is good. And I think the other side of this is you end up with streamers. I've seen a lot of streamers who think they know everything. And they just want to be an expert on everything. And which can be hard because some people they have a wide variety of expertise. And like, I have a lot of things that I'm quote unquote an expert in. And so and I tend to only stick to those topics personally. So it starts to look like I know everything. But what I mean is somebody who's talking out of their framework. Like, if you're talking to me and I'm talking about like, you know, fixing a computer, setting up OBS, microphones, sound, like, and anything that my degree covers, then it's a little different. But you're not going to find me stepping outside of that and telling people how quantum physics works. I know it works, but I don't know how it works. And it's very easy for a streamer to want to be like the expert on everything and comment on everything. And this is dangerous. I've seen streamers literally tell people depression isn't real. And they've gotten in trouble for this too, by the way.
I hope so.
anxiety doesn't exist, and yeah, right. Tell that to my armpits. Tell that to my
Your
sweaty
armpits have
forehead.
anxiety?
Yeah, my armpits are anxious as hell.
That's pretty.
Yeah. You
I have anxious armpits too, actually.
Yeah.
I completely
Ditto.
resonate with what you mean by that.
yeah.
To rein those puppies in, otherwise, yeah.
All the anxiety comes out of me in the form of saline. So I think don't overstep your bounds, right? Like don't try. You don't need. Nobody cares that you aren't an expert in any subject. And this is like, in some level, I feel like people take it too far and they think that I'm an influencer, so I have to be held to this high standard, right? Like, oh, it's super important that people look up to me and they're gonna hear what I have to say, and so I'm gonna try and say the right thing all the time, even if I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. Like, guys, there is no depression, there is no anxiety. Those things don't exist. You don't need to see a therapist. What you need to do is eat and sleep properly, and then you're good to go. Medications, those things are, there's so much bad things you can say as a streamer. None of that was advice, by the way. That was just an example of things that you should not be doing and stepping out of your realm to influence people over. You don't want to try to be the expert at everything. Sometimes it's a good influence to be a regular person who doesn't know things. Like, sometimes that's the thing that's helpful to people, is that this person I look up to, he doesn't even know what the heck's talking about. Like, it's okay to be a normal person as a streamer, right?
I always tell people, like, for all intents and purposes, I'm a clown. So whatever I say, you should take with, like, a varying degree of salt as you would treat a circus clown, right? Because, at the end of the day, what I am is an entertainer, right? I entertain. That's my expressed goal as a streamer, right? So, like, while there are some things I can comment on, so, for example, for me, right? For the area where I would say I have a little bit of expertise in is model building, right? Specifically for Gunpla, right? So if you ask me, like, oh, well, what kit should I buy or what blade should I use to cut plastic, I could probably give you a pretty good rundown of that. I do that, every Saturday, right? I could probably give you a decent rundown of that. And the best part of that is, if I'm wrong, I cost you what? $20 maybe? Like, if I'm wrong, your life is not going to be destroyed because you listened to me and you got it wrong, right? Versus where if I'm there telling you, health issues, that's a lot more fraud. I don't want anything to do with that for that reason. It's like that could have potentially deadly consequences, right? And I don't need that on me, and you certainly don't need that in your lives either, right? So it's like Sonny, it's like you said, knowing where your boundaries are and knowing what you're good at, and not trying to pretend that you're good at everything, right? Because I think as streamers, right, because we do sort of have this sort of stream of consciousness going a lot of time, it's very easy to sort of like gravitate to commenting on everything. But yeah, some things maybe you just shouldn't comment on.
I would say even if you're gonna comment on something, right, figure out the way to say it in a way that is not definitive. Like, my experience was this, but that's not true for everyone, or I'm not really well versed in this. All I know about it is X, Y, Z, and I don't even know if that's accurate. So, I mean, you can still share that, and I think it's good conversation to talk about. Like, I certainly don't not ever talk about mental health. I just don't talk about it in definitives or on an individualized basis. I think someone in chat had mentioned, like, giving individualized advice over the internet in this format in any way essentially is just not a good idea. It's just not. It's not a good platform for individual focused advice. Even if it's expert related, it's not good, right? So if you don't have the qualifications, I'm not saying you can't share an opinion, but you have to be thoughtful about it, right? And you shouldn't be giving individualized advice about things above Gunpla.
Well, I feel like expertise also very much depends on your environment, right? Like,
Absolutely.
your expertise in mental health is definitely not something that's conducive to a stream, right? That's conducive if you're seeing a patient and you're examining somebody one-on-one and you have more information than what's available in a stream, right?
Right.
Like expertise very much depends on where you are and what the situation around you is.
Yeah, and I think like say you're a mechanic, right? So say you're a mechanic and someone comes in your chat and saying like, "Oh, my car's making this weird sound." Are you going to sit there and diagnose their car problem on over the computer? No, right? Because that's not a good thing. And then if they try to fix it themselves and their car explodes, it's kind of your fault. Right?
Not kind of. It's like
Yeah, that makes you.
I mean, it's
responsible.
a little bit their fault for following the advice, but it's a lot your fault for giving the advice.
true, but there's that expectation, right? If you say that you're a professional in X,
Right.
whether or not you intend to imply that you're saying I have some degree of expertise. You should listen to what I'm saying because I have, I went to mechanic school or whatever. Or I got 6 degrees. Like that. That gives your comments some weight, whether you want them to or not, right?
Right.
Your
That's why you have to be
experience and expertise,
responsible.
yeah.
You
Exactly.
have to be responsible when talking about it. Just because you're an expert doesn't mean you should.
Well, a real expert is always going to be pretty open-minded about their field anyway, because most things humans don't have a full grasp on. Like, we have a good grasp on some things, but if you really look into everything as deeply as possible, you'll find somebody who's like, yeah, we don't really know why it works that way. We just know that it works that way. This is true for computers and a lot of things. Like, we just know that it works that way. We don't know why it works that way. It just does. And so, the risk here is feeling like you need to be an expert in everything is not a good way to go. You want to stick to what you really do know and try to be as open-minded about things as possible. Because the other risk here is you say something that's like absurd, and then chat agrees with you, and now that's now you've got like the one person in the chat who didn't need to have this weird group reinforcement of an idea.
It's an echo chamber, right?
Yeah.
Because there'll be people in chat, and I've seen this in chats, not necessarily maybe in my chat, but I've seen it in chats where a streamer will say something that's silly, like patently silly. Nobody should be agreeing with it. 3 people in chat are like, yeah. I'm like, you didn't think that 10 minutes ago. You think that now because the person you look up to said it, right? And like, that might be a consequence just because they haven't thought about that thing before, and they're being presented with information, and this is the first time maybe they've had to think about that. So naturally they're going to agree with like the person that they're watching, right, or the person that they're being influenced by. But like, it's very easy to get caught in a negative feedback loop where you're saying something, chat agrees with you, makes you think that you are onto something, and the more you talk about it more, chat agrees with you more. And you feed off of each other, right? Like you said, like something like you said earlier, like when growing up with a group of friends, like you start sounding like each other, you start copying each other's mannerisms. It's kind of like that with streamer and chat in a way, like.
But there's also like that thought of like if the chat disagrees, then people might gang up on that person as a troll, right? So hopefully trying to create a culture where there's a little bit of discourse and conversation actually is helpful, right? People sharing their experiences just as that, their experiences, their thoughts on things in an open space, instead of developing this kind of echo chamber. And if you don't agree with me, then you're just a troll, etc. So I think, that in and of itself is an influence, right? How we negotiate discourse is influencing people.
So how do you guys feel about controversial topics? Because there's a lot
Depends on the topic.
Yeah, depends on the topic. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go with let's try to define some areas here, because I feel like it's very hard to navigate certain subjects on Twitch. And so do you guys feel like there are subjects that just should not be touched as a streamer?
Yeah,
Yes.
Star Wars.
Yes.
No, Star Wars is a great one. What are you talking about?
Like,
That's
legitimately,
perfect.
if Star Wars conversation starts like on my stream, I nix it, and if it starts in other people's streams, I leave.
Any Star Wars?
Yeah, because it always devolves into the same like 4 points, and people just start talking in circles. It's very frustrating.
Akin to that.
I'm not like this. Seems so benign compared to what I was. I was thinking like religion.
Well, I mean, like politics and religion are the obvious ones, right?
But yeah, okay.
100% agree now with now that Pickles has said it. I agree with him.
or which Dark Souls is the best?
Star Wars versus Star Trek. Okay, let's go. Let's have a special podcast episode. We got to get this out there.
I think it depends on the theme of your channel too, though, because there are political channels, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of what their niche is.
There are also religious channels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if your goal within that community is to talk about that kind of stuff, I think that's a good space to talk about it, right? But a lot of times those are kind of one-sided, though, as well. You're not often... Yeah. I don't spend a lot of time in political channels, to be frank. So I'm not speaking from a place of expertise, but a lot of times they are a leaning of one way or the other. So it does have that echo chamber kind of effect. But if you're sort of a neutral channel, you're going to see a lot more variance in opinions, and that can be
I think there's a difference between a discussion and having a pulpit, and when you're a streamer, that's kind of what you have.
Yeah,
you have a soapbox.
You become more like a preacher.
Your voice... Yeah. Well, you just naturally, unless you have other people on stream like this, like in this kind of setting, if it's just you on stream, your voice is going to carry more weight simply because you can express what you're saying and read chat and quickly respond. You don't have to type. Your voice is just going to carry more weight than what anyone else in chat says, right?
Yeah,
especially if you have a fan base.
It's unfair to have a debate from the streamer with the chat, which is kind of what you're getting at, because you the streamer have a microphone and chat has a keyboard and has to talk in between other people.
Our voice is literally louder. Literally.
Well, it's like
literally louder. You also
shouting versus sign language or something. Like there's a huge difference.
Also, the other thing is not just louder. You have as scummy as it sounds, you have the power to squash what somebody else says.
Yeah.
You can literally shut somebody down if they're contradicting you. You can literally shut somebody down if you don't like what they're saying. Or your mods can do it, right? You have potentially a team of people that can amplify your voice, and the setting amplifies your voice versus somebody like you said, and like Meat said, it could be very difficult if somebody does have a dissenting opinion to feel, and it starts to feel like everyone's ganging up on you, right? Like, because there's people in chat that are just agreeing with the streamer. There's the streamer themselves. There's mods. There's people who just want to move on and not talk about Star Wars. Like.
How do you guys recommend people deal with a topic that the streamer immediately the streamer realizes is a red flag? So
it depends on like the culture of the stream, right? Like if it's a easy hot button that you don't want to talk about, you just say like my go-to is like Twitch isn't the place for this kind of conversation, which when I say that I just mean like my channel is not the place for this kind of conversation, so we're gonna just like nix it and move on. And if people want to like hang on to it, like I gotta moderate that, right? Like I gotta try to continue to stop it or put like a final word on it and do something, but like
because there's gonna be people who won't let it go, right? There's always gonna be somebody who's like just stuck on that topic, and that's what's rattling in their brain today. So
yeah, I don't know.
Have you guys how often do you run into controversial stuff? Like how often do you feel like you have to squash it?
So my Gunpla streams, ironically enough, are the space for that in my community.
Right, because you're not playing a game.
You're not playing a game. We're chatting. We're listening to music. I've lost count of how many times I've had to pause the music so I can make sure that what I'm about to say is absolutely crystal clear to everyone.
Oh, so you have like this is true. You
misunderstand what I'm about to say, right?
Yeah, you take your time and like you actually like kind of present the stream differently when you're going to say something carefully, which is probably a good idea.
It's to encourage people to like listen, and also like, hey, listen, I don't want you to mishear what I'm saying. here, and it's always around obviously sensitive topics, politics, religion, things like that, right? Because like I have opinions on those things, and chat has opinions on those things. And obviously, while I respect most opinions, unless they're actively harmful to other people in chat, at the end of the day, it is my stream, right? So like, I am going to be a little bit selfish and be like, well, I'm going to present my view. You are welcome to disagree with me, but at the end of the day, this is my soapbox, right? And I think that's part of the responsibility of being an influencer is not necessarily to change somebody's mind about something, but like Meats was saying, like make it clear that this is my experience, right? This is my opinion. This is what I believe. This is why I believe it. You are welcome to disagree. You don't have to necessarily agree with me, but at the end of the day, like this is my experience.
Do you guys?
And you have to make it clear to who you're talking to, right?
Is this like all topics are safe once you do that, or are you still staying away from God, religion?
It really depends. It depends on what the conversation's been up to that point. You don't want to cold turkey right into God, like that's that could be problematic necessarily. But like, and there's certain topics like that I know, for example, are sensitive to a lot of people. Like for example, like I will not talk about abuse and sexual abuse on my stream because I know a lot of people are very, very sensitive to that kind of thing, right? Even like having to come from a refugee, even talking about war and things like that, can be very tricky.
Yeah,
because I know there's a lot of people who are very sensitive, who have lived through that kind of violence, right, and don't necessarily want to be reminded of that when they go on a stream. Versus like something about talking about how I disagree with X religion, that's not necessarily as triggering as talking about some real heavy shit, right? So,
right.
Stuff.
You're playing Super Mario Odyssey, and people start arguing in the chat about,
Race.
Republicans.
Oh God, race.
God,
Yeah. Race I think is like a giant red flag immediately, right? Like,
yeah, I think race.
Just shut it down.
Most people can globally agree upon if that starts to come up from a negative perspective.
I'm
that
so
needs to
over
get
the whole race
got.
thing anyway. It's like we're people. We're just people. Like,
but usually somebody who's bringing that up though, or who's bringing up these kinds of like really like hot button topics, is looking to get a rise out of people.
Yeah.
Like they are looking to start a confrontation, right? So you do have to be careful about how much rope you give somebody, right?
Is that an instant ban? Be like, it's 2021, okay? Like
Almost 22.
Bye.
I would say so. It's only an instant ban if you use it in a really negative way. If you just bring it up, I'll be like, hey, listen, let's not talk about this. If you come to my stream shouting the N-word, you're going to get banned. I'm sorry.
I think that's pretty clear.
Well, yeah.
If someone mentions like systemic racism or talks about like, those types of things, I think that those are generally
while playing Mario Odyssey.
I don't know how it came up. Maybe it comes up somehow.
This happens.
But yeah, if you're like playing Mario Odyssey and then someone's talking about like systemic racism and those
two
types
people
of
are
things,
arguing
like,
in chat. They're not even arguing with you.
Yeah, I'd be like, this may not be the place for this.
How do you guys deal with that?
I think it's a good conversation to have, but this isn't really the place for that. You're kind of bringing the chat down.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's exactly what Meat said. It's usually the best thing to do is be like, hey, listen, I understand that you guys have passionate opinions about this. Take it to Discord, take it offline. This isn't the wait for the Gunpla stream, right? There's ways
right.
to ways to steer
Twitch
conversation
chat
away from
Snazzy's Twitch chat feels safe. So I don't, I can express my opinions with buttons, the buttons on this controller thing here, clicky clacks.
But like there's time,
if you
time and a place.
If you want me to get in Discord and share my opinions with my vocal cords, that's gonna make me very uncomfortable.
Listen, you can type in Discord too.
True.
I've had to tell people, like, just moderating other chats, that, like, you guys need to take this to DMs or something. Like, this is not a
Even that, I don't know that that's
conducive.
is that a
No, I
healthy
know.
way to influence people to be like, go argue in DMs?
Well, like, I tell
Take
them,
it
like,
outside.
my first inclination, like, in that instance, was like, we're in that particular instance, we were talking in circles, and I was like, we need to just, like, stop this, because this conversation's going nowhere. We're not actually debating anything. We're just yelling at each other. And if you're not gonna let it go, like, go away. Like, don't do it here.
Right. And this is
There's
one of
a
those
time
things.
and a place.
Time and place is important. That's something everybody needs to kind of get a grasp on. Which is, I find that Twitch is like a giant like misunderstanding of time and place for a lot of people. And it used to frustrate me because I had that ingrained in me. Just my parents were very much about like time and place. They're constantly telling me that because I was always like an inappropriate child, and then so I learned, time and place is important, and then nobody else did. It seems like once you're live, you're like, so I just want to know, like, so you guys don't immediately shut down everything, but also this would be one of those places where you'd want to have, if you're going to share an opinion on it, you need to know that you're kind of extending the conversation, and you're almost inviting more, right? Mm-hmm. So if some people come in and they start talking about something, religion, and you're like, this is not the time or place to discuss it. But my opinion on God is now.
Sometimes if it's just a small, like, between two people and it doesn't seem heated, I just let it happen.
No, I mean
I
from the
don't worry
streamer.
about it. Right.
Yeah.
Like, saying something brings attention to it.
Yeah. So you need to know that people are going to kind of follow your lead. Now, so like the moment the streamer starts inviting, there is no final word as a streamer. Every word you say invites chat to respond. So you're not gonna be like, I don't think it's impossible for a streamer to be like, well, let me just say this and we'll be done with the conversation. That's never gonna happen. Chat is always gonna try and like one up you or respond or ask another question.
There absolutely is a final word. It's called emote only mode.
Yeah.
It's called stream ending.
Yeah, end the stream. Yeah, but then you don't want to take that kind of conversation into someone else's chat either. So, you raid in and then the argument continues.
I've 100% had to. I've done a stream where I didn't raid simply because, like, I know that the people in stream have been too rowdy, and be like, no, I'm not taking you.
It's timeout. Everyone needs a timeout.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna turn the stream around.
Sit in the corner.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things we should talk about with this influencing thing is actually related to a more business aspect. Okay. So we're going to transition here to talking about your associations as a streamer, your associations, your partnerships, your relationships with other streamers when you co-stream. You need to, there's a level of responsibility you should probably take in vetting who you associate yourself with at every level. If you're gonna co-stream with somebody, you might want to go and see what that person is like before you stream together. If that person on their stream is doing all the things you wouldn't, or talking about a bunch of things you would never talk about, and then you suddenly co-stream with them doing, say, a model building stream together, and
now this is a very specific example.
Now all of a sudden you have to deal with that person's if they're maybe even just their personality is a clashing thing with the flow of your stream, the energy of your chat, your community, and maybe that person's just super negative, and that you don't want that going on your channel because now the whole stream is like a pity party for the other person that's just with you. So you want to be kind of careful. This is like the most co-streaming you do, right? You don't really get on streams with other people, do you?
I'm a lone wolf.
This is smart. This is a good move though, because it simplifies things.
Yeah, and like I enjoy streamers that are a lot more saucy than me.
I like it.
Right. So the moment you really invite it, it's like
yeah, and like the people that I would want to stream with are people that I can't really stream with. Really, and it's not because
Why
of
though?
them.
Explain that.
So it comes back to influencing, right? So my full-time job, there's a public aspect to it where they need to know what I do outside of my job. Like I literally have to report that I do this. So if they stumble on my stream and there's a guy smoking weed and cursing and talking about, I don't know, sexual things.
Right. So I should leave because that's how my stream used to be.
No, you're
Yeah.
no, but like this is a clean space too, right?
Right.
That reflects poorly on myself and my job, and also just what I want to represent, right? And I don't have nothing against that. Again, I consume that content as an adult, but it's you have to think about what you're representing too, and how that might influence your outside life. Because a big part of my existence is my outside life too. So it's a personal choice, but also a professional choice that I have to make there. And if you have a similar job that might be in the public, or think if your boss stumbled into your Twitch stream,
Oh.
how would that go? Right, and that's
Ooh.
what I think about.
Yeah.
I think that's my
Because
nightmare
my
scenario.
students know that I stream, and I think some have actually come into my stream.
Oh, I'm
So
sure.
I
I'm
have to
sure
be
that they
careful.
learned. Yeah, I'm sure. If they were anywhere near Twitch to begin with, they
My
probably.
bosses watching my stream is probably my nightmare scenario. I'd be like, nope, we're shutting this down right now.
Yeah.
The internet was a mistake.
I
Like,
was never here.
Yes, who you associate yourself sends its own message. It's a part of this whole influencing thing. So it's a good idea to spend some time and make sure that if you do stream with someone, say in voice, like Discord, that those people know the rules. Maybe even just like Twitch rules. Well, I've had people come in and be like, use completely inappropriate language just playing like video, Call of Duty or Fortnite or video games or something. I'm like, dude,
Yep.
I'm live.
Using
You know
female
I'm live.
words.
you know,
Like you came in here from my stream. Why you say this thing now? You trying to get me in trouble?
Yeah, never turn on co-op voice chat, right? When you're streaming.
It's
co-op
such a thing, dude.
if you want saucy, there it
Yeah.
is.
So you want to do some vetting, and you want to also try to. This is also true for brands, and if you start having relationships with sponsorships. I have some rules for me. You guys, really, it's all just about trying to make sure you know who you're getting in bed with, who you're associating yourself with. For me personally, I would never take a sponsorship from a consumable item, something people eat. It's just too much of a risk, in my opinion. And anything that's like medical related, like we could probably bring this up, but there's a pretty big streamer recently, and she associated herself with a new item that was supposed to have some sort of studies to prove that it was a health product and that it would help you. And you guys know who I'm talking about? Should I just bring it up? The controversy. I think everybody's pretty aware of the controversy at this point.
Yeah, I think it's not like disparaging the individual. So I think
Yeah,
No.
this is a fact that happened. Yeah.
See,
is a
this is a
mistake.
good example of why you want to avoid these types of products and things. Because you could have a sponsorship with a company that's just making an energy drink, and then they run into trouble, and now everybody's consumed this item.
no.
And it's difficult. You don't want to. I personally, that's where I draw a boundary. Non-consumables. I'm okay with telling people microphones and cameras and lights and things that aren't necessarily going to have an impact I can't control. You're not going to buy a microphone and then 10 years down the road find out that it was built with like lead and
You hope not.
Hope not. Yeah.
it's very unlikely, but it is very likely to suddenly find out the energy drink you've been drinking has levels of lead in it that are high enough to trigger a warning system, and higher than vegetables, high enough to have to put a warning label on it. And you want to be kind of careful who you associate yourself with, and this is kind of true at every level. It's not just consumables. You want to be careful about anything that you kind of associate yourself with. Did you guys remember this controversy with BetterHelp. Do you know about this?
I don't know the controversy. No.
Was it about like the licensure of the providers or something?
All I remember is that all the YouTubers were hawking sponsorships from BetterHelp, and then BetterHelp turned out that like they weren't like certified to be mental health professionals, or they didn't have like all their bases covered for what they were offering. People weren't getting, some people were getting like bad advice, and it was a difficult relationship, and a lot of YouTubers just had to completely drop the contract and
I've only
apologize.
heard about it, but like I know what you're talking about, but like I don't know the specifics.
A more relevant one that's more recent is the blue blocker product that the massive YouTuber was trying to associate herself with, and then everybody looked into it as soon as it was launched, and they're like, "There's no studies, there's no evidence, and then she's like, we're not allowed to release the studies, or and then they had to literally shut.
That is such garbage.
Yeah, they had to shut down.
Not allowed
Yeah.
to release the
Yeah.
studies.
Yeah,
But it's even it goes beyond that. Like you said, it's not just consumables and products. It's also like the example that I can give freely, Blizzard, right?
sure.
If you're somebody who plays World of Warcraft, which in my spare time I do, but if you're somebody who streams a lot of Blizzard things and you're like, that's kind of your niche, it's not a good time to be that streamer, is it? Right?
Yeah,
right
that's
now.
a difficult one.
Like, it's a difficult time to be somebody a Blizzard enthusiast right now. So like,
But it's okay. I
it
think
goes beyond.
it's a little bit different with Blizzard because you can have this hope that they can correct their behavior, and they could just like have new devs and new employees and kind of fix their cultural situation. It's a little harder to take back people consuming poison, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what I mean. It's more difficult to get on stream and apologize that you were associating your brand with a company that potentially made people sick. So you want to be careful with that, and that's why I suggest, at least for me, I won't take a sponsorship with consumable. The other thing is you kind of want to make sure that your sponsorships are not a direct conflict of interest, right? So if I give people advice on equipment, microphones and lights, if I were to take a sponsorship from Elgato, that would be a huge conflict of interest.
No one would ever do that.
would do
If
that.
I were to take a sponsorship from Blue Microphones, that would be a conflict of interest. Now I'm not in a position to actually advise you on making a good microphone selection. I'm just going to tell you to buy my sponsored microphone brand, and because that's the relationship and association you have there. So if you're not in a position, my responsibility, my influence, to keep it in a more holistic and pure area, I need to be careful about not associating myself with brands that create that conflict of interest, because now it's not in my best interest to help you pick a good microphone. I just want you to work with the company that I work with. And so, these are things that I think the extensive part of streaming that people don't think about. Your business associations, your partnerships need to be well vetted, and you need to make sure that you're not sending a message basically that you don't need to send. Sometimes it's better to be a free agent and be able to just have your opinion instead of being in a contract where you're forced to have a perspective.
Yeah, I think you have to take into consideration the idea of bias. And we always think of bias, well, a lot of us think of bias as like a conscious thing, right? Where bias is a very unconscious thing in most cases. So even if you were offered a sponsorship and they're like, you don't have to even hawk the product, you just give us your full opinion, you're still gonna potentially have that unconscious bias because you're like, this is associated with good because this was associated with someone giving me money, right? And we have unconscious biases across the board for so many things that you're oftentimes not aware of, right? So your opinion is not always just influenced by facts or reality, right? And some of us disagree on reality even.
Yeah. No, that is true.
all
That's-
our realities are similar, but honestly, my reality is a little different than yours, right? It's a little bit different. And some people's realities are very different, and that's usually called illness. But, anyways, when you're thinking about your biases, right? You aren't always aware that they're happening. You know, so like I started playing Dark Souls 2 and I already had a bias that it was not going to be as good because everyone was telling me that. Because everyone's already telling you that, or you already have that seed in your mind. Even if you're actively trying not to play off of that seed, it's still there and you're still influenced by it. And I think sometimes we forget that it's the best one. Yeah. I don't know yet.
I'm the guy going around trying to upweed all those weeds. Like I will die on the Dark Souls 2 hill for sure.
But anyway, but seriously, that's the thing to think about too, is we can never be completely without bias, right? Your opinion is always going to be that unless you are presenting something that is literally just a data set with statistical analyses that other people can reproduce similarly to that data set. You have opinion that's there. You have interpretation of the world around you. So you have to be really thoughtful about that.
And also when it comes to sponsorships, right? Unless you're actively like, you know, yelling about how bad your sponsors are, which nobody does, I don't think, right? Like you don't get a
then
sponsorship.
they wouldn't keep
doing
giving you
that.
money.
Exactly. Like if I were to say, right? If I were to say my stream is sponsored by Monster, right? Let's just, you know, I drink enough of it, right? Hypothetically, Monster sponsors my stream. Somebody who comes in and goes like, well, I mean, like they'll look at it and go, well, maybe he doesn't like necessarily rave about Monster all the time, but like clearly it's at least good enough that he's willing to have the logo smeared all over the place, right? So you're influencing without, it's passive influence, right? At that point, like a sponsorship can be
if
a
you have
really, like,
logos-
a really heavy thing.
If you have logos plastered all over your stream, that is not passive.
So you're not bringing it up all the time, right?
I mean, the stream's doing it for you, right? Like,
you know, I'm not bringing the can into the field of view every few minutes, right?
yeah,
Like
your stinger is a monster stinger, and everything.
yeah.
No, you're right. Like, really, the advice here is to navigate carefully moving forward, and don't jump on relationships and sponsorships just because the door opened. You know, you need to try to make sure you have a balanced relationship. A lot of sponsors out there will just want to use your influence to push their product and their brand, and it's just going to be like really helpful to the sponsor and not so much about you and your relationship with your stream and your community. So just be very careful and vet the people that are on your stream, vet the people you associate yourself with, the companies, the brands. You know, ask questions. That's a great way if you're going to start a relationship with anyone, especially sponsors. Just ask them a bunch of questions. If things seem weird or fishy or off to you, maybe don't do it. Maybe, you know, but it's your stream, you do what you want, right?
I think that's part of when it comes to when we say responsible influencing. I think it also means, like, to me at least, it implies that you shouldn't let a sponsor take advantage of you. Like, your time is worth, your image, your brand is worth a certain amount, right? You shouldn't undersell that simply because somebody offered you, right? If
Attention.
Titan came and offered me a lab, you know, Secret Labs offered me a chair, whatever. Like, is that really worth me, you know, quote unquote, selling out, right?
Right.
Like, responsible in that sense also means like you have to know what you're worth and not to just hawk anything that's thrown at you, right?
Yep. Yep. This is a pretty massive topic. We could talk about this for probably another hour, going into other aspects. But I think we hit a lot, and I don't want to give people too much to digest. So let's go into our closing thoughts about all of this. I think just a quick roundup about things that we've said. First, you are an influencer, whether you like it or not, when you're in this space. You have a microphone, you have a voice. Unless you're just like literally no cam, no mic streaming a game.
Silent, not even interactive chat.
Yeah, nothing.
Just gameplay.
Yeah, just gameplay. at that point, it's kind of questionable how much of influence you have. But the moment you have a camera and you have a microphone, you're talking to people. It doesn't matter how many people are there. It could be 1, could be 20, could be 100, it could be thousands of people. And you're starting to gain momentum, and you start to have influence over people. You want to prepare for that mentally. You want to kind of accept that burden of responsibility. That'll make everything easier, because moving into whatever avenue, sponsorships, relationships with people, with chat, conversations, you have mentally accepted that you have this position of influence. You don't want to be in denial about that. That is a dangerous place to be. And you want to know your limits. You want to not try to be an expert in everything. You want to make sure that you do your research and study and vet the companies and the people that you associate yourself with. Don't give advice on things like that you're not an expert in, and even when you are an expert, it's better to just share an opinion. And like, mental health is a huge one. We should probably just do an entire podcast on mental health, which is most likely coming in. But there's a difference between endorsing something and just doing something as well. So like, maybe this is the last little thing we should touch on. You yourself are free to do what you want with your life, but coming onto stream and endorsing that behavior is where things kind of become difficult and slippery, and you want to stay away from that most of the time. It's okay to say, I drink a lot of water, I think it's good for me. It's bad to probably be like, you guys should only drink this, and hold up a thing. There's a huge difference there.
Brought to you by Poland Spring.
Is this vodka or is this water? We'll never know.
Never know.
Ooh, 20 minutes from now, we might know. So, Snazzy, let's start with you. We'll go back around. I'll give you give us your closing thoughts on all of this and any little bits of pieces that you feel like we should hear.
It's closing thoughts. It's going to sneak up on you. I guarantee it. No matter how much you've thought about it, there's going to come a time where you're sitting in a stream somewhere, that lurking, no one knows you're there, and somebody in the stream is going to talk about you and your stream to somebody else, and they're going to comment on it as well. It's going to happen. If you stream long enough, if you have an audience of any size, it's going to happen. And in the end, you just have to be cognizant that what you do and say, it's kind of like, I hate to say it, it's kind of like being around a lot of kids. Like, what you do and say is going to influence some of those people. They are going to see it. They are going to hear it. And you should you have to be ready. And like you said, you have to be willing to accept the responsibility that what you do and say is going to be viewed by perhaps a larger audience than you think.
Okay. Yeah, it is true. It is a good way to look at it, like it's a bunch of kids, because what's the difference? Kids are just
we all kind of are, right?
Yeah, kids and
We're just
adults.
large children,
Adults are
really.
just old kids who know a little bit more, which makes them more dangerous.
Sometimes they know a little bit more.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
All right, Pickles, give us your thoughts.
Being responsible is hard. No, you need to. You can trust your mods, right? But at the end of the day, you are the ultimate mod. You need to moderate what's going on in your stream, in your chat, and everything that's happening. And if things are getting hairy or things are getting out of hand, even between you and in between your mod and somebody else, you still need to step in and take responsibility and not just let things flow and you kind of throw your hands up and be remove yourself from the situation. It's your room and everybody knows that it's your room, so everything that you do and say influences the people that are there, right? So it's just there are many factors in this, but you just need to be conscious and aware of everything that's going on in your house. You know what I mean?
Yes. That was good. Eat your meats.
I feel like we pretty much covered most of these things. You know, I think parents definitely influence their kids, right? And it's not our job to tell kids or people or adults what to do and what not to do, but that doesn't mean that they don't listen to us, right? So you have to think about how you're presenting yourself to the world, and you have to think about how even the small things that you say can make a big impact on someone that's hearing those words. I would encourage everyone to take a moment of self-reflection and think about a time when someone said maybe an offhanded comment or a strange opinion that didn't seem like a big deal probably to them at the time that really affected you. Right. And I bet most people can think of an example of that where the person may not have even remembered saying that. So just be thoughtful, right? Just be the person that you would want to have your, I don't know, teenage child watch and be influenced by. Be a good example, right?
What would 12-year-old you think about this?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Be a good person if you can be, and if you're not, make sure that people just kind of know that that's your jam, and not to be, try to have those caveats of like, I don't endorse this. This is not good, sort of thing, and don't give medical advice.
Oh God, yeah.
Stop it.
That was repeating
Stop
several
it.
times. Yeah, stop it.
Please.
Okay. Well, that was very good. Thank you guys for your thoughts. I hope everybody got something out of this. Again, these are just our perspectives and thoughts on these things, and we're really having this podcast and this kind of discussion to get people to think critically about themselves, their streaming, their content, and we hope that this kind of thing is helpful to you. This is just the beginning of these conversations, really. If you guys have stuff that you want to share, if you want to continue the conversation, you can always leave comments on the YouTube, or you can join us live on Twitch Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific. That means you can come into chat. We all read chat. Many of us respond. And
In person, in time.
we're here to hang out with you guys, talk to you guys about this stuff, and share our perspectives. So thanks, Snazzy. Eat your meats and pickles again. I'm going to do this. I want you guys to all go check out these lovely streamers when they're live. Go say hi to them. I'm sure every single one of them would be happy to have you come in and tell them your thoughts. If these podcasts have been helpful to you, that's one of the best ways that you can go tell us in person. Tell us when we're live. Share with us that it's been helpful. And I've had people DM me and tell me that the podcasts and the stuff that we talk about in IQ has had a direct positive impact on their stream. If you're curious about joining our community, go to Infinite Quality Live. You can apply. Please make sure your VODs are turned on and read the application carefully. Answer the questions carefully. We do critically vet the people who join our community, and we take a look at this stuff. So, again, please go check out Snazzy Bastard, Eat Your Meats, and Highly and Pickles. We've got some new stuff coming for the Infinite Quality community. One of the things is going to be a weekly show, movie night style TV series watching business. This will be happening in the Infinite Quality Watch With Us Discord. This is a second Discord. If you're not in this Discord, anyone can join this Discord. You don't have to be an Infinite Quality member. You just have to know somebody from the Infinite Quality community. Me, this podcast, and you join the Watch With Us Discord, and you can hang out and watch stuff with streamers who are hosting movie nights and TV shows and all of that kind of stuff. So, the links for that are on the website, Infinite Quality Live. Look for the Watch With Us links. And as always, I appreciate everybody who stopped by and chat and listens to this podcast on your favorite podcasting platform or on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'm done. No, thank you guys.
Roll
Yeah, do all the things.
Slap that like button.
Smack the button.
Smack the button.
Smack it.
Also, Dark Souls 2, best Dark Souls. I'm not
Dark
sorry.
Souls.
Thank you guys. We'll see you guys in the next one.